Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar, The Principle of Success. This webinar outlines timeless and universal principles to help you achieve outstanding success both personally and professionally. You'll then discover ways to apply these principles in your life and witness the differences they can make. There are things we've all heard a million times before and yet still find hard to put it into action. So in this webinar, we'll take a look at some of the time-honored truths it might be useful to remind yourself of. But this webinar does not lay down inflexible rules for you to apply to your life. Rather, it offers brilliant and unique ideas designed to inspire you to carry out your own experiments and craft a routine that suits your needs. In this webinar, I am going to presenting the summary of the 10 best-selling books with the theme of success and principle of success. So the key to success is something we all wish to possess. If you doubt that, just consider how many tons of books about success you can find in bookshelves worldwide. Success, however you might measure it, is often elusive and mysterious. Over the years, many people have tried to distill the sense of success into easy catchphrases or simple mottos, but most of these have basically failed. On the other hand, you can find plenty of books that promise you the secrets to a successful life, but with so many options, it can be hard to know which is the best one. So I have gathered and summarized some proven principles that basically lead to success both personally and professionally, and I provided some real examples. So the first thing that you need to understand is that the success has no restriction. The first thing has to do with the fact that people sometimes think of success as something for others, and but not for themselves. It's essential to use yourself of this belief and remember that success has no restrictions. Second, no matter what other people say, success isn't a zero-sum game, and there is plenty to go around. Anyone with this mindset can achieve success, and it doesn't have to come at someone else's expenses. So there are some principles that I would like to be talking. The next thing that you need to understand on the journey to personal and professional success is that you are the director of your own life. When we fail, we often look for an excuse, blaming the failure on things that happen to us. It is too easy to just complain about the circumstances, but if you pay more attention to how you're living and the choices you're making, you'll see whether you are on the right path to success. For instance, I'm just going to give you an example. You're either fit or out of shape. So you got to ask yourself, what are you doing or not doing to make your body this way? If your goal is to lose weight, you'll need to be aware of your daily calorie intake and your level of activity. You gotta be honest with yourself. Do you eat well? Should you cut out chocolates or junk food? But you got to remember as well that no one says that the change is easy. It requires discipline, persistence, and some experimentation. To achieve success, there are plenty of unknowns and choices. And the fact is that you're not the only person facing this particular situation. One efficient way to achieve what you want is to model successful people in your unique way. So in your unique way is very important. So you might ask yourself that, is this copying? No. The answer is no, because you're doing it in your unique way. Your thinking just needs to be solid. It doesn't have to be original, though. And you can learn a lot by looking at what other people have done in similar circumstances. So you take parts you love and you model them to suit your life. Suit your life. There are different ways that we can create personal success for ourselves. But what if you're not sure what personal success would look like for you? So you gotta relax in this way because you're not alone. So slow down and take some time to contemplate. One of the first steps toward personal success is to examine your reasons for being. This philosophical question that you can ask yourself: why are you here on earth? The life purpose exercise can basically help you discover this. To find your purpose, you got to identify two of your strongest personality traits. And then you need to describe the way you interact with others. If you do that, you can create your life purpose statement by combining these two together. So, for instance, what you can say that you can use this example. I use this example to clarify. Basically, you can say that my purpose is to use my honesty and passion to inspire others to move forward in their chosen profession, to help contribute to a world where people have fulfilling careers. So the next step is to create a vision, a mental picture of what your perfect future looks like. What would your perfect job be? How much free time would you have? What sort of friends? So therefore, it is important to create a vision, which is a mental picture of what your perfect life is. American President John F. Kennedy, who basically envisioned putting a man on the moon, and beside that, the civil rights leader Martin Luther King, who imagined a free and equal country for all people, were two actually influential visionaries. They succeeded in making seemingly unattainable ideas a reality. So basically, why shouldn't you do the same? Once you have basically your visions in mind, you got to break it down into smaller goals that are ambitious, specific, and tangible. So you got to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve, and how much time will you give yourself to achieve it? For example, being nicer to your colleagues may be, well, meaning, but it's not a specific measurable goal. A clearer goal would be, I will acknowledge 6 colleagues for their help with the largest project by the end of this week. So as you can measure your progress, you'll know when you have achieved your goal. There are some tools that achieve visions. First is affirmation. Affirmation starts when you state your goal as if it has already been realized in a complete sentence. The most effective affirmations are in the first place. They are positive and to the point. For instance, you can say, I feel very happy when I'm driving down the highway in my new orange Lamborghini. Once you have crafted your affirmations, you got to connect each with a clear image of your affirmation called a visualization. To do this, you got to close your eyes and imagine your affirmation in such detail as you can. If your affirmation is, I enjoy relaxing in the sunroom of my villa in Madrid, you got to visualize the colors of your house, the furniture in the sunroom, and so on. So there are some proverbs from very important and well-known people. I put it in this slide. For instance, Pablo Picasso said that everything you can imagine is real. And Albert Einstein once said that imagination is more important than knowledge. So you got to understand that how important is the visualization. So there are some rules that you can apply to achieve success. One of them basically is the 10 multiple rule. The 10x rule basically means investing 10 times more and reaching 10 times further. In other words, reach for heavens and pick a goal that's beyond your wildest dream. It might seem silly, but if you aim too low, you'll still be disappointed when you achieve your goal and feel crushed if you fail. It's much more desirable to fail to meet an incredibly high expectation than to attain a mediocre goal. So it basically said that success always requires more effort than you originally thought. Have you heard about the 4 degrees of action? It's a pretty simple concept that states that when confronted with a situation, you can respond in one of 4 ways. You can either do nothing, retreat, take normal action, or take massive action. And it's the last of these that is the key to success. To see this principle in action, look no further than children. When they face a challenge, they simply give it everything they've got. They don't pause to calculate or budget their effort. So you can basically follow their lead. Instead of determining how many hours you need to devote, just make massive action your natural habit. So the next is that being resistance. Actually, now that you are well on your way to achieving ultimate success, you'll need to prepare yourself for potential obstacles, and if you depend on others, possible rejections, basically. So if someone says no, just keep trying until someone says yes, while keeping in your mind the next step. The Kentucky Fried Chicken founder Harland Sanders was no stranger to rejection. In fact, he heard no more than 300 times when proposing his business idea before someone said yes. So if he would quit at the first rejection, there wouldn't be more than 11,000 KFC restaurants around the world. on your road toward your dream life, you need to excel at what you do. An important principle to focus, basically to focus on, is to become an overachiever. So you got to be don't afraid to keep trying and work your way toward your goal and passion on a daily basis. Consider Pablo Picasso. He created 50,000 works of art with averages at 2 per day. Or there are plenty of different examples that you can find. For instance, the writer Barbara Cortland provides an inspirational example of how much you can accomplish if you put in enough work. In 1983, she set the world record for writing the most novels in a single year, and that was 23 novels. So her passion was writing about romance, and she pursued it every day. So thanks to her dedication, she published 723 novels and sold 600 million copies of them. One of the tools that you can use, basically excel your success, is to address your unfinished business. So do you have basically any project that you have abandoned or left half done? Do you need to clean your closet or finish last year's taxes? So these are small things that can take valuable energy from achieving your larger goals. This basically cleaning up is not only applicable to the tangible stuff in your life, but also to your relationships. One effective technique you can use to help you forgive someone is to write it a total truth letter to vent your anger. So you got to clean up the relationship, you got to forget and let it go for your own benefit, and you can basically write it down to vent your anger. So when you want to write total truth letter, you can write things that have angered you, and you'll notice that acknowledging your pain and it's a first step toward forgiveness. Face it, you're often your own biggest enemy, because most of us we have so many negative thoughts about ourselves. These are so-called limiting beliefs, where we fixate on the things we think we can't do, basically. This mentality can be very damaging. To succeed, you need to stand, if not eliminate completely your negative thoughts. But yet, if you look deep enough, you basically realize that self-love is often found underneath the self-criticism. So you might think, I'm fat and lazy, but if you examine these thoughts, what you're being saying is that I'm scared. So you got to be transitioning from judgment to admitting the fear, and then you got to be saying that I care about myself, instead of saying that, I'm fat and lazy. I want to be healthy and strong, and I deserve to feel great about my body. Another concept to succeed is that you don't need to chase success. Instead, excel to make yourself more valuable, and then consequently that will lead to success. So you always have to keep growing, and then the success comes after you, so to say. One of the great tools that you can use for being successful is to build a support team. So you got to surround yourself with successful and supportive people that you basically can get inspired and mentored from these people. So highly successful people always have others to inspire and mentor them along the way. So you can do it basically by gathering a so-called mastermind group, a supportive circle of the people whom you can share ideas and challenges. To do so, you can consider identifying 6 people with whom you are close and hold scheduled conferences or Skype calls where each person takes 15 minutes to pose questions. For you to get the most value from these sessions, each group member should excel at a skill you wish to learn or have achieved a goal you covet. You can also get a mentor. It's another powerful way you can find support is to identify a mentor, and to do so that you can basically write an email to someone you think would make a suitable mentor and ask if they could spare 15 minutes per month for you to share ideas and ask questions. Or you can basically support others and they will support you in return. So in this way you create meaningful and honest relationship. As I said, it's very important to model the successful people. So it's important also to understand how successful people basically think. So to claim, as Copernicus did, that the Earth wasn't at the center of the universe must have struck his contemporaries at some form of madness. But he was right, basically, and and we were forever in his debt for having stuck to his guns. So you've got to think outside of the box and crave your own path. But you got to understand that the journey along that road can be lonely. The General Electric CEO regularly tells his employees that existing relationship with clients are more important than individual sales. Why? Because he knows that when it comes to being successful in a long run, it's sometimes necessary to leave the nitty-gritty behind for a moment and consider a bigger picture. So you need to try and considering the big picture for achieving the long-term success. But you can ask yourself that how can you start cultivating a big picture thinking? By making sure you're always learning, and that's the reason that you're watching this webinar. Lots of the people don't think further than the day ahead, but they wake up and they go through their mental checklists of what they have to get done and that day, what they'll be doing a month or year from now rarely crosses their mind. But long-term planning is vital to success. So you can begin the month by reviewing your calendar, think about what you want to achieve over the next 30 days, what projects you want to complete, what objectives are, and how much time to set aside for family and friends. This is an important aspect. This perspective actually will help you find the time you need to get the things that matter most done and make you happier and more successful. So you can plan your life, not your day. And the proverb says that the success is the fruit of planning, actually. Another thing that the successful people do is that they find extra time in the morning. So successful people use this time to nurture their careers, relationship, personal dreams, and they'll give you this, and they all find it actually in the morning, most of them. Take it, for instance, from the James Catrine, the leader of the headhunting agency, Spencer. Um, he interviewed a group of highly flying executives about their morning routines, and 18 out of 20 of them had this one thing in common. They were up before 6 a.m. every day. Another example is that Steve Reinvent, the former CEO of the Pepsi, he gets up even earlier, starting his day at 5 a.m. with a 4-mile run. After that, he takes some quality me time and either reads or prays. Next on the agenda is to have a good breakfast with his kids. So if he's traveling, he makes sure he can stick to his tried and true routine by only ever staying in hotels with treadmills. We talked about the morning routine. The morning routine actually helps you start the day well and achieve your own ambitions. But there are some tasks that you can, passionately pursue, and something that basically create proactivity, not reactivity in your day. You can do writing, reading, exercising, meditations, and you can find some me time for yourself and a time that reflecting your day. Exercise basically sets both body and mind. Meditation calm you down in hectic days, and you can also give some time for yourself before starting the work day and focus on yourself and your dreams. So the key to successfully crafting your morning routine is that experimentation. Try out the ideas that I'm offering in this webinar that you like, the sound of it, and if it feels good, stick to it, and if it doesn't, try something else. And I'm sure you'll find your own unique combination soon enough. One of the best morning routines that basically successful people are doing, that is they do basically what is important for them. But these things that matter, they require a little bit of extra self-motivation. There are just kind of activities that you don't have immediate payoff, but might just change your life in the long run. So by getting up early, you can make time to do what you love, and then you can also use the weekend. The point of the weekend is that they're not like the rest of the week. What you need is a break, of course. That's why it's also important to do things you wouldn't do on any of the other 5 days. But you got to also understand that you got to take it easy and slow and go easy on the weekend to-dos. Another tool that can help you basically reach success is to have a creative thinking. Whatever line of the work you are in, creativity is pure professional goal. And the first point to remember is that creativity basically doesn't just mean having lots of virgin ideas, but you can start thinking creatively by simply considering a greater number of the options. Another tool for being successful is to have the unselfish type of thinking. So adopting new modes of thinking boosts your chances of success, but they're also a way of thinking about the world that can change your entire life, and that is basically this unselfish thinking. That is something that pharmaceutical corporation Merck and the company showed in the mid-80s. The company decided it wanted to achieve more than rack up ever greater profits after successfully developing a cure for liver blindness, a disease affecting millions in the developing world. The company decided to give the drug away for free. After all, those who needed it the most were the least able to afford it. So it became the cornerstone of the companies that the people are more important than profits. So it's important. The lesson here is that it's always better to be part of something fantastic than aiming to be a fantastic yourself. There are some popular thinking, and we have, against the popular thinking, some sort of a thinking called best thinking. So thinking for yourself can be a risky business, stray too far from the herd, and you're unlikely to make many friends. If everybody accepts something as true, then it must be right. But the reality is that no. Think of the belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. Pretty much everyone thought you'd have to be mad to question that idea, but then along came the Copernicus in the 16th century and mathematically proved that our solar system revolves around the sun. So the fact is that you got to consider what is for you and not what popular is. Think things through for yourself. But how do you basically break your habits of relying on others' assumptions? A good place to start is cultivating a habit of thinking things through for yourself before following others. Once you start considering what's best rather than what's popular, then you're already well on your way to success. There are some notions about being successful and being lucky. So the people say that, hey, this person is successful, or hey, this person is lucky, and because of the luck he got successful. I'm gonna give you some examples here. The chances of stumbling across a 100 bill are basically tiny. And the odds are in fact so small that we tend to attribute such events to luck. But I think luck is really just another way for us to conceptualize how the improbable occurs. For example, the odds of tossing a coin 20 times and having it land on heads every time are very, very small, but do it enough times with enough people and then it will basically happen eventually. And although we are aware that such a thing could theoretically happen, we are so accustomed to improbable phenomena that we often prefer to think that some external and supernatural forces have played a part. But you should be aware, always be prepared to grab the opportunity, and to my experience, the luck is a little like a bus. So if you miss one, another will come along. But if you are not prepared, you cannot jump on. So you got to be prepared. When you're prepared, and then when the opportunity takes place, you just simply grab it, and that's what it's been called a luck. But you don't basically need to to wait for the opportunity. You can also create your opportunity for yourself, and that's a better advice actually to exert control over your own destiny and create opportunities for yourself. And of course, there is always a connection between happiness and success. So early on in life, you may have been thought that happiness comes only after you've done a considerable amount of great work and become a huge success, but it is this exact lesson that's responsible for many people's unhappiness, because the equation actually works the other way around. When your motivation is money and basically admiration from others, you're entering in a never-ending cycle of unhappiness. Even if you reach your goal, it will only result in a fleeting moment of happiness before you feel the compulsion to set another goal. Keep in mind that while there are 7 billion people alive today, there are 108 billion people who have died, which means that 14 out of every people who have ever been born are already deceased. So being alive is a bit like winning some wide cosmic lottery. So you don't need to don't forget that how lucky you are to be alive in this first place. And in that respect, you got to stay productive and keep your purpose alive. There is this type of the attitude in the life that you can take, basically, which it is called positive mental attitude. It says that the success is about having a positive mental attitude. So, take for instance the Henry Ford. He was a prime example, a man with a positive mental attitude. He wanted to develop a cheap V8 engine suitable for mass production. So 8-cylinder engines were only used in luxury cars, and at that time Ford's engineers criticized his dream, claiming it was impossible, but he continued to fight for his idea, and after a year he achieved an unachievable, the mass production of the V8 prototype. So the V8 was a massive hit, the innovation that established basically Ford's brand, making him one of the most successful businessmen in the history. And that is all thanks to his PMA. Another thing is that basically positive mental attitude allows you to see problems as opportunities for success. Another example is Charlie Ward. During his time in prison, he was able to change his negative mental attitude to a positive mental attitude. This shift won him the respect of both inmates and prison guards, and he moved up in the prison hierarchy. And that during that time he met the industrialist Herbert Bigelow, who was serving time for tax fraud. So Bigelow was so impressed by Ward that he promised him a decent job after he was released. And sure enough, when Ward was released, he got that job. And furthermore, after Bigelow died, Ward became CEO of the company and died a millionaire. So literally any problem, whether professional and personal, can be conquered with a PMA. Another thing is that along with the PMA, you also need determination to make a difference. Someone who basically embodied passionate determination and motivation is a farmer, Milo Jones. I got to tell you this story. Due to his, severe illnesses, Jones became paralyzed. And although his body no longer served his head, was working overtime, and he began figuring out how to accomplish certain tasks in most effective way. And with this motivation, determination, and PMA, he managed to convert his little corn farm into an empire that sold Jones little pork sausages, which made him a millionaire. Another tool that is useful is that you can ensure your goals to your subconscious by using auto-suggestions. You can start by reading a sentence aloud twice a day, for instance, and then your subconscious will remember this and influence your conscious mind to seek out things that will get you out there. One man named Bill McCall was a master of autosuggestion, actually. He lived in Sydney. He was 21. His business had gone under, and he had failed at running for federal Congress. But instead of admitting defeat, he resolved to use the power of autosuggestion. He wrote then that by 1960, he wanted to be a millionaire. After some years of repeating this call to himself, he became not only the youngest man in history to become a member of parliament, but also a chairman of 22 family-owned corporations. Oh, and also he became a millionaire. Did I say that? So you can also change your behavior by changing your habits. So and that is very important. Good actions are what makes us good people, and improving the way that we act is merely a matter of the right training. So we know that our feelings influence our actions, but the converse is also true. Our actions influence our feelings as well. You can never give up. You also got to never give up and always look out for any missing pieces that can help you on your path, and you can motivate others by motivating yourself. For a wonderful example, for the wonderful example of the interplay and exchange of motivation, let's look to parent-child relationships. As babies, children motivate their parents to take care of them. Yeah, there is someone is calling, and I got to continue this. So I wanted to tell you about a wonderful example of this, an interplay and exchange of the motivation, and then we can have the example of the relationship between the parent and child. As babies, children motivate their parents to take care of them, and parents nurture their children by caring for and supporting them, which basically fosters the trust. Thomas Edison is actually was always rallied by the trust his mother instilled in him, even when he was misbehaving. She basically stood by her son, and even he was even by the time that he was basically failing. And there are some basics that we can use to have success for companies. Another important aspect is that any company can consistently meet its objectives regardless of the size, age, or finances. But the key here is the management. So consider, for instance, the managers with strong visions and commitment to set a path that help their companies achieve predictable success. So these basically leaders stay calm even when external or internal problems arises, working to assess the problem and determine the optimal response. Flowing water is a great metaphor for management style you need. When a stone falls into a running water, the water is utterly indifferent to the motives of the stone. It simply responds accordingly with minimal drama. When the stone is pushed downstream, the water quickly returns to its calm and still state. And there are 3 stages on the path to predictable success, beginning with the earliest struggle and fun. So first, a company will hit the earliest struggle. This initial stage requires the company to address 2 simple problems, actually. So are there enough buyers for the product, or do they have enough cash on hand to pay the bills? So these are the earliest struggles for each company that want to start their business. But do your best and have 3 basically to have 3 times as much cash as you think you can need. So by doing that, you can also bring the success professionally in your company. Another thing that you can also encounter is that you may be tempted to overspend just to keep the good times rolling, but you got to understand that you need to slow down and don't do it. After this earliest struggle, the company that basically you have created will likely grow very quickly, and there is a time that sales will float in, and then you have the large amounts of the revenue, and then you think that the all difficult times is over, and you finally made it. But as a result, you may be tempted to overspend to keep the times rolling, but this is a very, very dangerous risk to take. To be successful in your company that you create professionally, you have to devote much of your time and resources to try to solve decision-making and execution problems. You may also encounter the treadmill phenomenon. This phase occurs when a company becomes overly dependent on the established system and its bureaucracy, thus therefore losing its creativity. For instance, consider what happened when the music industry shifted from CDs to MP3 players. Plenty of the big players lost out when they failed to adapt to changing customers' demand. Very, very important issue here is that you need to reinvent yourself. You need to refuse to let your degree or job title define you. So consider a company that exemplifies reinvention, Google. I recently asked a friend who works at Google, what are the latest projects your company is working on, and I was expecting him to be to be a search related thing, but actually they were totally different, totally building an automated car, developing bracelets to cure cancer, and connecting remote areas to Wi-Fi through the balloons. So in other words, Google doesn't let the job define it, but the job, which is like search engine, but basically the Larry Page, the co-founder of the Google, also doesn't let his degree define him. So he majored in computer science, but his job today isn't about tinkering with software. It's about solving major social problems. And the next thing is that you got to consider is that your burning desire will enable you to overcome obstacles and conquer your fear of failure. How to reinvent yourself again? We should strive to help others with their pain and channel our own suffering into our passions. If we do that, then when we basically alleviate the other people's pain, we basically do something about our pain as well, because we channel it into our passions. For instance, consider the rapper Eminem. So he grew up in a poor family, and he suffered many tribulations, which continued into his young adulthood with the familial betrayals and a bad job. However, rather than stewing in his troubles, he used them as grease for his creative meal, transferring them into material for the rap lyrics that would eventually propel him for underground rap battles in Detroit to worldwide super stardom with 220 million record sales under his belt. A very important fact here is that without determination, talent can only take you so far, and being broke can drive you forward, actually. So you got to also have the determination in your life. And when you have the determination with the talent, then you can basically push forward and achieve your smart goals. And then you got to also consider to make growth-oriented decisions. Every time that you make a decision in your career and in your life, or in business, you should ask yourself, was my decision fear-based or growth-oriented? So many decisions are made out of fear. When you make a fear-based decision, it generally points toward an underlying insecurity. For example, you might stay in a job you hate because you're afraid you won't find another one, and it's natural to make such a fear-based decision, but it's also inadvisable. In my experience, they always lead to regret. And then in order to have the best job ever professionally, you can set realistic expectations about work, which basically makes you satisfied with what you do. For instance, when you ask to describe your dream job, people tend to say things like a job that lets me travel a lot, or one where I make twice as much money as I do now. But such notions are totally off base, just like winning the lottery, which some people list as their ideal career. The notion of luxurious job is a fantasy, which with a low probability of realization. And if the characteristics of your place, like things like your boss, co-workers, salaries, or even office politics makes you dissatisfied, it might make sense to look for a different position within the same company or the same role at a different one. So, for instance, if you have a family but your job requires loads of travel, you might prefer a different role within your organization that keeps you closer to home. With that being said, I am going to be finishing my webinar, The Principle of Success. Here you can see the references, the books that I have recently read and I put together and summarize all concepts of success from these books. I would like to thank you for staying up with me, and I wish you all the success in your life. See you then next time. Thank you.